You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
This makes my nipples hard.
Hey there, thanks for joining us. Today, Paul and I just kind of wanted to talk about something that might even be relevant to some of our listeners, and that's game development through the eyes of a person who's been stuck knee deep, neck deep. I don't know how deep you've been in, but you've been in deep in game development in AGS or Adventure Game Studios for the last couple of years, making a game that maybe our listeners have heard of either on socials or through our podcast called The Phantom Fellows.
The answer was C, balls. Balls deep. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Are we good? We're good. We're fine. Yes, we're gonna, man. We've been overthinking how to do a Phantom Fellows episode for a long time now, and I don't want anybody tuning in who's just not that politely not interested in the Phantom Fellows to tune out. So we're trying to frame it in a sense of like, what is it like to make an adventure game? Because I would have wanted to have heard a podcast on this before I started making a game, just because I don't know, for all of us out there who like behind the curtain stuff, like, you know, want to know, like, you know, what's that like though? Like, what is it actually like? What's the first thing that you did, and how did you think about that? And what was an accident? Like, how do you make a puzzle? And stuff like that would have been cool for me to have listened to. So we're gonna talk about how to make an adventure game using the Phantom Fellows as a vehicle.
Yes,
he says pretentiously.
Which is good because the Phantom Fellows has a vehicle in it. And so, you know, full circle, I think this is a great idea.
Yeah, it was a small circle, but it was definitely a full, complete circle, yeah.
So, yeah, I guess, you know, I just want to get right out here and ask, what is your origin story? Like, why, where, when? Like, here you are, you're sitting there one day, you're staring out the window, and all of a sudden you're like, I want to make an adventure game. Because, okay, what I see, not knowing the exact answer, is I saw that you were making all these like really cool pixelated graphics for your album covers, because Paul, for those who don't know, he is and continues to be a musician and had some albums out before with all sorts of cool music, and the album covers for them would be these really, really neat pixelated images of himself, or like a cassette tape that had cool color reversals, or just these, I don't know, it was like these pixelated images. So to me, that almost seems like it would be the beginning of what you're doing now, but I'm sure there must be more to it than that.
Yeah, I guess, like, if you, to the listeners, if you find yourself like, I don't know, messing around with pixel art or just like using it as wallpapers, and then maybe late night one night you like download AGS but you never actually open it, like, these are all signs that it's coming, that you're probably gonna or even more so, if you've messed around with like Phil Forte's SCI Companion and like you start decompiling Sierra games or Lucas Ripper for Lucas games, like, these are all signs that like maybe you want to make a game. And that's how it was for me. It was just like teasing myself with little, I don't know, messing. I can't try not to make it keeps wanting to come out really sexual, which Pixar is not inherently.
Pixel art you know what, it is sexy for those of us that have nostalgia. Like, when you see a scene from like Gold Rush, isn't there a part of you that shivers and just goes, oh yeah, that's the good stuff? Like, and I think that's realistic to say.
Yeah, no, violent sexual arousal is is what I feel when I see Gold Rush. So yeah, it was brewing for a long time. I did all the things I just said back there, but I was imposing them on the audience. But yeah, like, I would every now and then I'd like download AGS, like, I'm gonna do it this time, and I would, and I'd mess around with like Visionary Studio, other adventure game creators, trying to figure it out. I was just a big fan of like AGS and like their games, and I would always go and download their little demos and mess with them. Because back 10 years ago on iPhone, you could actually play AGS games on iPhone, but it doesn't matter. Like, enough about iPhone. The origin story for me, and I just looked at this in my notes. I had to look up like what was the first notes I took on this. So it was a dark and stormy night. It was a weird tonal shift. Yeah, yeah. I'm setting a mood here. It was winter in Colorado. a cozy village filled with snow. And no, I can't sustain that. So I'm gonna leave that there. But it was November 12th, 2020, and I do remember quite vividly. I was in my room, sitting up in bed, and I was like, okay, we're gonna do this. We're gonna make an adventure game, like, for real. And yeah, I guess that's where it began. Like, my son Strummer was sleeping at the time. He would have been 5 years old, and he was a big influence too, because I was like, I want to do something that's like a legacy to leave him, and I also want him to grow up seeing his dad being creative and taking risks and aiming high and just all that good influence stuff. For him, like, it'd be cool for him to see me, like, just chasing the dream, just doing, getting out there and, trying to do the thing that he wants to do, and whatever, to be a good influence, to be a good dad. That was a large part of it too. So yeah, so there I was sitting with my notebook, which, it's not that romantic. This was 2020, so it was an iPhone. Damn it, I said enough about iPhones. But yeah, it sounds so much more romantic to say my notebook, but it was just my note app. So he immediately just loses some luster. But yeah, I sat up and I was like, okay, like, what are we gonna do? What kind of game do you want to make? And so that was the initial moment. I just feel like I've been talking a lot. I know I have to keep talking to actually say the origin part, but I just want to pause to be like, you say stuff.
Well, I mean, that's cool. That's the moment. So all of these little things kind of culminated, and all of a sudden you decided. Now, did you have the characters in your head first, or did you have the concept of making a game first, or now, like, what was the first bits of the game that started falling into place for you, especially ones that ended up maybe sticking or not sticking? Like, did you have an idea of having a clown rodeo, or, is there any, like, did you go straight into a guy and a ghost? Was that like it right away?
Can I just say, oh my God, we are being so professional right now. We sound like a real podcast. Like, this
Wow.
I know. I don't know how much longer we can keep it up. So I just wanted to, pat ourselves on the back. Listen to us, like, maintaining a storyline. This is great. So, okay. It's funny you should ask, Anna. I I didn't have, like, a story I wanted to tell, like you hear a lot of game devs say, or, like, I really wanted to, get this story out there, and adventure games was, like, my vessel to do so. It was the exact opposite. I'm a huge fan of the genre, as our listeners know, 6 years into doing this alone. But just as, like, a huge fan of the genre, and I wanted to make. I sat down and I was like, what kind of game do I want to play? Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I was like, I want to play a game where there's two characters, and because I like games where you can trade off characters, and I don't want to say there's not enough of them, but I do remember feeling that at the time. Like the world needs more trade-off games. Maybe it's because I had recently played, like, Thimbleweed Park, but I was just like, yeah, I want more. As much as our audience knows how much we love Sierra, really, it's large credit here is to LucasArts, where they were kind of the masters of this with, like, Day of the Tentacle and of course Maniac and Sam & Max, where you get to trade off. And I really wanted that for me. So I'm like, if we're going to have two characters, they have to have two different skill sets that are arguably complementary. And so that was kind of the actual starting point. Was like, okay, that would be fun. If we can trade it off. And I do feel like maybe there's not enough duos, but looking at our little design sheet for this episode, apparently we're going to get to that later. So I'll just say, yeah, it didn't really start with, like, I want it to be a ghost and a human. I want it to be, like, two different skill sets, and kind of go from there. I don't remember exactly how I landed on exactly doing a ghost. I think I was just sitting there trying to think of, like, cool ideas and a cool premise, but unfortunately I don't have, like, a remarkable I don't remember. I'm trying to use too big of words for my capacity. I don't remember exactly how I landed on Ghost, but I think it was a pretty short leap from two main characters. One of them's a lot different than the other, and my simple brain's like, well, it's a lot different than being alive. Not being alive, so let's go with a ghost. And plus, it's like a very, again, like a short leap to make. It's a very quick way to find an immediate polarization, where it's like, okay, well, then he can go through doors and the other one can't, and yeah, that could work for puzzles. even though like I'm not sure there's a single puzzle in the game that actually utilized that. But the point being is it just seemed like the next natural evolution in answering the question of, okay, if we're doing two characters and they got to be different, then in a fantasy setting, what's the difference? And so one's dead. Yeah.
So, just to go backwards a little bit, you mentioned that you wanted to make a game that you wanted to play, and you're saying that, but you wanted to be kind of your own ideas going into it. Were there games that you had played that were not satisfying? Like, was there a game that was like, wow, this is really not what I'm looking for. I'd like to see more of what I want. Or was it just, man, it's been a while since I've played a game that I really like. I'd like another one out there and for it to be mine.
Yeah, it was more the latter, as opposed to like looking at subpar disappointing experiences. It was more like, hey, I've been like overly analyzing and obsessing over adventure games for a long time, especially for the podcast. And it's like, why don't I put that all to use? Like all the especially the earlier iterations of this show, like there was a lot more reviewing and things like that and playing modern indies and stuff like that. So that was two stuff like that in a very short period of time. I'm sorry. But yeah, I was kind of more like, hey, you're in a position to, I've been judging adventure games a lot lately. So let's use that to the advantage and say like, well, what's like an all-star lineup, like a wish list, like, and that's I guess exactly how this game got started was putting together a wish list of things I wanted to see and do in a game, whether I had or hadn't seen them before, and just start checking those off the list. So like the first thing to check off the list was like 2-player characters, and you can switch between the two of them. Like that was like a wish list. I'm like, check, okay, we got that. Now we're on our way to like making this ideal adventure game, in my own perception.
Right. So then why funny? I mean, because your game is super funny. Obviously, I've beta tested, I've played it, I've been there for quite a while, and it still makes me laugh every time I play through it. And it's like, it's not just funny, like, oh, here's some funny quotes from other places and I can put them in a game. It's literally original written humor based in time and place in the game that's not like referring to other things. It's referring to like situationally what's happening. Like it's so relevant and funny.
Thank you. I guess it was always going to be a comedy for sure. Like I highly value humor and just laughter, and I guess for the sake of it, I promised myself to be more, or to be especially open during this episode. So I'll say that I'm not much different than a lot of people who really value comedy, where they probably went through something terrible when they were younger and learned to use comedy as a way to move through it. So, and so for me, because I don't want to leave that vague, because then it's like, well, geez, what happened? But so when I was like 15 or so, my dad died in a plane crash. So it was just like an immediate switch off thing. And that's possibly relevant too, because the game is about, death, overthinking death and things like this. And it was just like when that happened, and it caused a cascade of strange events where I ended up like not living on my own, but living with my brother in the middle of Hollywood, where I wasn't at the time. Like it really thrusted me into like, growing up kind of quickly and things like this. But when it immediately happened, I was like, I can either just laugh at the absurdity of this, which includes the tragedy and the difficulty and things like that. I can either like learn to laugh at this, or I can let it possess me and kind of take me down, so I just chose to laugh at it, to try to just keep finding the funny, keep finding the humor in any situation, as dark as it was. And it was more or less a coping mechanism that just never went away. So anyway, that's why I value humor. That's possibly even why on a subconscious level that this game has so much to do with death. And then for my own sake, it's like I really like, as you said, Anna, like observational humor, and maybe, unless I'm not even sure if this is different, but situational humor, I guess that could be different. But yeah, those are like my two favorite. I don't know. It's kind of just how I am. Like, I don't want to say like I like to write that way, because that's not true. If I'm messaging somebody, like it'll come across that way, because it's just how I frame the world, I guess you say, like through a filter of what is funny about this situation. And it turns out that works decent for adventure games, because that's all you're doing in an adventure game is like looking at things and noticing them. And if it's a comedy, then hopefully noticing them funnily.
Well, you play off the cuff, I think is the term I would go with, and you're very good at banter, the sort of the loose, the easy, the flow, the back and forth. And don't get me wrong, some of the lines in the game, Paul has poured over and talked about, and even a bunch of rewrites have gone into it. It's not like the writing is not necessarily like the process itself as flippant as it appears in the comedy. Like it's some of it's got like some depth and some layers, or maybe advice, like telling the story about your dad. I could see how like there's a little bit of like a mentorship role in the game, and how important it would be you as a dad who's raising his son entirely on his own, for you to convey those messages for your son. Because I can imagine if you had something like that yourself, if from your father, obviously it would have been very important. So there's a lot of relaying and learning through the generations going on here. There's it's a lot of depth very quickly in this conversation about this game. It seems like it really means a lot to you.
Again, we're doing just the most mature job we've ever done. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I guess it helps to have already shared the dad stuff, because I think I've only ever shared this really with you and with Pushing Up Roses, which is there's an irrational thought process that remains in my head. I would like to, I don't know, frame it right now like I'm above and past and over it, but that's not true. Where it's like I had lost my dad like just when I was becoming, let's say, a man. That sounds quite dramatic.
It's a super important hormone-filled time where advice is needed, and you're trying to pull away as a teenager, and you weren't.
Right.
It was a different situation for you entirely. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's almost like we were in a tunnel, and on the other side of that tunnel, you come out of that, and you have this new adult relationship with your dad, where they tell you, ideally, where they tell you how to live and how to do man shit, and they kind of open up themselves. Like you suddenly become old enough to be able to hear about like them getting laid and like shit that you just don't want to hear about all through puberty and stuff like that. So I had just missed out on that, and to this day sometimes I just wonder what he would have said or thought about certain things. And super quick, just annotation to say that I was probably obviously by now very close with my dad, so it was a very good, healthy relationship and things like that. Albeit just a bit too short. But the point that I'm getting at here, which I'm saying to remind myself of, is that I have this, not unrealistic, but irrational, improbable fear that, like, what if my kid lost me too soon? And this adventure game is a really cool way to be able to take control of Oliver, who is basically, me, or my ideal version of myself. And to be able to be like, that's what my dad would have said. Like that if my dad if my dad looked at a fence in a barn, this is exactly what he would have said. Because I wrote that line of dialogue when I looked at that fence in the barn, and just for meaningless flavor text purposes. But so yeah, it kind of serves as that. And then on the slightly more probable realm of things, it's like I don't have to die young. Or this is so much darker than I ever realized saying it out loud. I don't have to die young for it to not still be something away from my kid to in his 20s or something, like put on my game and be like, this was exactly who my dad was. So I want that for him. I think that's kind of cool.
Because Oliver in the game does have a lot of similarities to you and your personality. Having gotten to know you over the years, I can see a little piece of you in him, although he's a different person, has different situations, but he's just got this kind of like you're more of a mix of him and Engelbert together, because, you've got this like wise side, and it's almost like you've taken different parts of you and like split them apart and then created a game from them.
Wow, that's pretty good. Yeah, thank you for articulating it that way. I don't think I'll forget that. That's really good. That's exactly right, because Oliver is like the playful, almost like childlike wonder side of me, and Engelbert is like is essentially my shadow, in like a Jungian sense. He's like he is the cynical bastard, I guess. Side of me, which is so fun to write for and play off of too, especially because he's dead. So it's like he's allowed to be in a bad mood whenever he wants, because he's dead, and that's gotta suck. But yeah, that's a very good way to put it.
Yeah, because this comes right into what I wanted to talk about next, which is character development. Because you've got this kind of like two-dimensional idea, and you've got this game idea, and you want to use pixels, and you've got these characters, and you want them to have different abilities and maybe bounce off of each other in a mentorship way. But how? I can see part of it. You give them depth because they are a part of you, and through that is depth. But there's got to be more to it than that.
Right. Yeah. I guess I think I made a lot of really, really good accidental choices. I made choices that just so happened to have worked out for me, that I didn't plan and didn't have like the foresight to had the capability or capacity to be like, this will be good for you, later down the line as far as writing is concerned. But just, I guess one thing I had the foresight was like, let's make Oliver basically me, or my most playful side. Maybe he leans quite, he's almost me in a fantasy level when he's like particularly irreverent, because it's like I wish I was that irreverent sometimes, where you get the ability to like actually think about what you're going to have him say for 20 minutes and have him say the perfect thing as opposed to real life. But yeah, just I accidentally kind of set it up to where things would happen pretty naturally. So it's like, I think you can get a good sense of like who Oliver is, and form a decent relationship with both of these characters, because they're coming from like a really real, hopefully familiar, relatable place.
I think one of the ways that, to me, you bring life to the other characters in the game, the NPCs or the other people in the game, is I've noticed there's so much movement. Either you can go back and visit different places on different days, or you can, just check on what they're doing on the same day and they're in a different place. Maybe customers are coming and going, or people are going into different rooms, ghosts are moving around. It's got this kind of a live sense. And that, combined with the fact that you can walk around, you've made the decision that your characters are not going to be static. I think perhaps being a fan of adventure games, that it was really important to you to not only click to explore, but visualize the character physically exploring as well. So is that why you kind of decided to go in that direction?
Yeah, because I think like free will and not. That's a bit dramatic, because obviously it's all got to be coded and accounted for. But the agency maybe is more appropriate. Having the agency to walk around and explore the world. Willy Beamish is probably the game I like the most that you don't get that. And then otherwise, like where you don't get to just, you can choose what room you're gonna now stand statically in, but there's just something different about being able to walk to the exact item and look at it. Just feels more like an avatar of yourself extended into that world. That was a must have, because I do tend to, almost on a subconscious level, avoid games like Heart of China, or the other one from Dynamics. God,
Rise of the Dragon.
Thank you. Yeah. The ones where it's just a static screen as you go along. So yeah, that was that. And I just want to go back a second real quick on the character development to say, for anybody listening who is considering making an adventure game, one of the best choices that I made was framing the main protagonist, around myself, especially if you don't have previous experience writing, because then it's like know exactly what that character is going to say in any given situation, because it's what you would say. So you just eliminate all the risk of sounding like plastic or phony or weird or insincere. If you give your character your own voice. So and
as long as you're interesting. Because if you're not, then your voice, if you're boring, wouldn't your character's voice be boring too?
Right, that's fair. But if it's not a comedy, you could
then it's okay.
Yeah, you make yourself like the serious guy, like the deadpan, they used to call the straight guy. You're the David Spade, not the Farley.
Like Larry, and not Balky, but Larry in The Perfect Strangers.
Right, man, I couldn't think of a better example than that. Yeah, that's exactly
it. Yeah, that's very reasonable. Yeah.
But for making the world feel alive, it's the same thing I was just saying with writing the main characters to myself. It's like, I tried to base everybody in the town of Elderberry, Colorado, which is a fictional town named after a terrible fruit. I tried to write most of them off of somebody I know. And I just like, I would sit there. I remember sitting at the park several times where like Strum would be on the swings, and I would just mentally be like going through people I knew and their quirks, and like who were the weird ones, who were the shocking ones. And I even grilled a few like, friends in person at the time, like, do you know anybody in your office that's just like a total weirdo? Like, what are they like? Name the person that that has these like strange quirks and strong personality types. And you get a bunch of cool, like, quirky, unique kind of tropes to build a character off of that way. So that was cool and potentially helpful.
Yeah, because you do have quite the cast. I have I have a screensaver, and every time you would put a new character on it, right? We had it on, and it's still not updated for the and anything else either. And it's just there's a lot. You've created a lot of different people for this game. Yeah, have you gotten attached to any one of the NPCs in particular, like one of the random like dads or anybody that's in there? Because I think some of them might even be based on people like family members, or what's the whole story? Who are all these people?
Yeah, I've definitely formed unhealthy physical attractions to some of them, for sure.
Yes. Great.
Yeah, no, I honestly, every one of them, like there's not a single
Good.
character that was like a throwaway or like yeah, there was a couple that like started that way, and then I was like, now I really like them. Now I see who they really are, and like, I would go back and like change their name and things like that. And once I had a better framing of them, and yeah, no, absolutely all of them. Yeah.
Yes, that's a beautiful answer. I like that so much. Okay, so Oliver can see and communicate with a ghost, but not ghosts. Why is it you phrase it that way in all the write-ups that I read?
Right. And that you yourself type out most.
That's fair.
I thought okay, the premise of the game really, once I was like, okay, we're doing a human and a ghost, and they're going to be able to trade off. Then it was like, well, what's a fun angle here? And so right away it was like, what if Oliver's just like burdened with a ghost he doesn't know? So like one rule that I'll always stick by with this in this world and this lore or canon, whatever, is like they are not related, and it will never be revealed that they were secretly related the whole time. Because I just thought it was really funny to. It's like for Engelbert, he can see and talk to ghosts, but no human can hear him or see him. Oliver can only see and hear Engelbert, so they have like this exclusive entanglement with one another. Let's say. So Engelbert through Oliver gets like he has the benefit of just, I think, being around somebody who's alive, I think feels better for a ghost than to be with other dead people, because other ghosts are pretty miserable, not happy about their situations, right? Or they wouldn't be like, in purgatory in a sense. So there's, we're attracted to life and charisma and things like this. So Engelbert is attracted to being around Oliver because he's alive, and he's he has a lust for life still, and so Engelbert wants to be around him. There's also things like agency, like Oliver can I don't know, turn the TV on for him, like things like this. So where once Engelbert discovered that he could communicate with Oliver and be seen by him, he wasn't gonna leave. So I really like the idea of Oliver being stuck with this ghost who he doesn't know and has very little in common with. Yeah.
That's great. So, okay, how about, how did their names even come into play? You keep saying Oliver and Engelbert. Those are funny names. I've always liked them. So so people are sitting there that want to make a game, and they're trying to figure out a way to name the characters. Did you look in a dictionary? Did you look at real life stuff? What could you tell them that might influence them in these ideas?
Okay. Right. Great. Very good question. Good questioning. I framed them both differently. With Oliver, I was looking for a I don't know, movie star, not action hero, because that would imply like, I don't know, perhaps like overt masculinity or something. I just mean like, yeah, movie star. That's probably good enough. It's a blockbuster kind of name. And with Engelbert, I was trying to continue the long tradition of ridiculous adventure game names. Obviously Guybrush Threepwood, Bob and Threadbare, even Roger Wilco is a tongue-in-cheek joke in itself. So like, yeah, I liked how there's a lot of adventure game protagonists out there with just ridiculous names. So advice wise, I would say those were two pretty decent framings. Like one, so the Oliver's name is Oliver Cobblestone. There's not a long backstory there. I wanted to name my son Strummer, and I was like, his mom's probably never going to go for this, and so if she doesn't, then I'm going to pitch Oliver to her, and she went with Strummer. So I was like, well, Strummer was going to be Oliver. Oliver was my B name. It was on deck, so I was like, let's use that for my character. Cobblestone, I just think sounds cool. I like its audible aesthetic. I'm like Oliver Cobblestone, and I don't know. Yeah, it just sounds cool. I could add many more superfluous words to that, but it just sounded cool to me. So again, I was trying to get that like framing of like movie star sort of thing. Right. And then with Engelbert, this one was like, at first I was thinking Humphrey, but then I was like, I want him to be older than like the Roaring 20s kind of ghost. Humphrey was Bogart, like you immediately kind of go there. So then I just always had in my head, and I think my dad used to always think it was funny, just the idea of a musician being named Engelbert Humperdinck, who's a real, I'm not sure if he's Turkish or British. There's some sort of connection there with him, but basically, yeah, there's a singer from like the 70s named Engelbert Humperdinck. He's actually named after a German composer. The guy behind Hansel and Gretel was also Engelbert Humperdinck. But anyway, I really liked that name. I thought it was ridiculous and it had a cool adventure gaming vibe, but you can't lift the whole name. So I'm like, all right, we're gonna go with Engelbert. And then it just so happened that Michael Fassbender was acting in whatever was on TV at the time. And I remember looking up and seeing the credits and seeing Michael Fassbender. And so combine that with, I always wanted with Engelbert, like I like the idea of like names that come from a long line of something. So like Smith it comes from a long line of blacksmiths traditionally. So right. I don't know, something about that. And I saw Fassbender and I was like, pickle bender. So that's it. He's from a long line. That's how you get the bend in pickles from his family. They are pickle benders. So yeah, Engelbert, that's how they came up.
I remember when you first told me what his name is going to be, and I told you about my Christmas pickle tradition, which I think is Dutch or something originally, and you hide as a parent on Christmas Eve the pickle somewhere in the tree, and the first child to find it gets a pickle present. At least that's how we represented the tradition. So I thought the name was fun.
I love it. I still fantasize one day of you finding out that nobody else has ever done that.
Somebody will write a letter and say, "You crazy." No, that's just weird. It was on the box of the glass pickle when we got it from what used to be a year-round Christmas store. So who is Engelbert? Back to the game. Like, okay, do we know, like, is there like a dossier for him at the beginning of the game, or how do we get to know him as a character, like as in who he was? I mean, because I guess he is who he is now. So who was he before he passed away? What do you know? What do we know?
Right. I like this question because I think we've personally had this talk quite a few times about, like Engelbert's background. And basically I've been very careful with revealing things about Engelbert's past life. And part of it is, I don't know, some of it like branches off into little gags where there's a pretty uncommon but still running gag where Engelbert refuses to tell Oliver how he died. Combined with this weird growing suspicion throughout the game that just a lot of the ghosts seem to have died like tragically humorous deaths, which ties into maybe why Engelbert doesn't want to tell Oliver how he died. But anyway, I've been purposely vague with Engelbert's exact backstory, and a lot of that is, since this is more behind the curtain, or not how to, because that's pretentious, but how I made an adventure game for anybody looking for springboard ideas, where it's like, leave some of this stuff vague so that in the future you've got wiggle room. And and I feel like leaving as much vague as possible has helped me keep things as natural as possible. Because then when an occasion presents itself and you have the space for it, you can hook it up kind of naturally. You don't have to like shoehorn it or make it work because you had the space for it. Anyway, sorry. So I've been really careful with his backstory, but what you do get to know in the game is just enough to know that he was present in the California Gold Rush. It's implied that he was basically in his prime at that point. So that gives players at least an idea to, if they want to roughly calculate an age. Right?
He does look pretty snappy.
Right.
Yeah.
And then after the gold rush, he was involved with the construction of the Brooklyn Bridge. So,
Mm.
okay, for our listeners, yes, this is because of Gold Rush, the game.
I was wondering, I was like counting in my head, how long is it going to be before he refers it to the game Gold Rush after he first says he was okay? Yep.
Right.
About 12
Yeah.
seconds. Yeah.
From Gold Rush to Gold Rush in 43
Yeah.
seconds. Because Gold Rush starts out, Jarrod
Mm.
leaves Brooklyn for the Gold Rush. So there's the Brooklyn thing,
Mhm.
but also, I've done my homework. I've made this game so that the nerdiest of us all could research the shit I'm saying and be like, damn it, he had that covered. So everything
Mhm.
will work out time wise. I've been really anal about that.
Yeah.
But what it also did for me, like on a writing level, was like now Engelbert has experience with early city life and with like Wild West frontier life. So then it gave
Nice.
me this ability to, yeah, like as a character
Rounds him
now,
out.
right, exactly. He's rounded out, and I can kind of fall back on him for um anything I need, I guess, basically. And one thing that I don't think I've mentioned anywhere is there were times where, as we've said before on our podcast and just alluded to, is like in the Phantom Fellows, everything is a hotspot.
Mhm.
So that's a look and interact response from Oliver and from Engelbert in every single room for everything. So like the sky, the stars, and the moon, that's 3 different hotspots. That's
Mhm.
the degree to which everything's a hotspot. So sometimes I wouldn't
Mhm.
have anything funny left to say. I'd be like, man, every room on this level has fucking stars, and I don't know what, because you can talk to the stars too, and that requires,
Mhm.
these are all have to be, to my standards at least, like something I considered funny. Like if I laugh, I trust that people will at least give a sharp nasal exhale at it. Anyway, when I couldn't think of something funny, I would have Engelbert spout off like a fun fact about stuff, because I always thought
Mhm.
that was cool. I don't know if anybody listening, I grew like had The Straight Dope Around by Clance. It doesn't matter. Cecil Adams, the Straight Dope had it was, I don't know, it was like a pre-internet book where you got to just find out like the weird facts and things like that. Anyway, just in case that resonates with like one or two of our listeners, a lot of me really likes the Straight Dope books growing up, so I like how just every now and then, like instead of a joke, Engelbert will just give you like a short or long-winded, like, this is the origin of this thing because I was around in 1910 and I can tell you why, blah blah blah. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to think of an example off the cuff. Jumping jacks. That's one that I just had to fix the code for. But Oliver's just like, hey, did you guys have jumping jacks as a kid? And he's just like, no, they were invented in 1910 by U.S. Army Colonel something something blackjack whatever. I forgot the real fact, but the real fact
Play
still.
the game to learn the real fact.
Right. Thank you.
Past Paul did know it for a brief period of time to transfer the info into it.
Exactly. So hopefully when it's not making you laugh and it's not philosophizing or being somewhat poetic or deep, it can at least just give you a random ass fact. You'd be like, that's where we get the name for that from. Cool.
Okay, well, speaking of facts, here's the thing. There is no official canon in the afterlife. And you have made a comedy game. So I guess technically you could throw all the rules out the window and do whatever you want. But like you have like very specific rules that even as the game progresses kind of gets revealed, and so some of these rules go backwards in the game and you're like, oh yes, okay, that makes sense why this is what. So how do you handle having a funny game that creates its own canon?
Right. Very good question. Okay, I'll split this into two, and I'll say that when it comes to the afterlife itself, because that's an unavoidable subject in a game with ghosts in it. I took the approach of, if you're a ghost, you didn't get to the other side. So the ghosts in this world don't know any more than we don't know in real life, and it's like,
Mhm.
what is on the other side, don't know. Just like we just don't know. Granted, like in the game world, like at least they know that ghosts are real, which is, I guess, proof of a soul, so they could probably sleep a little better than we can. But nonetheless, like we all don't know,
Mhm.
whether it's Oliver in the game or the player in real life. We don't know what happens after that. But for ghost lore, this is another thing I took seriously, because I don't like willy nilly game lore, or like I don't like bending the rules, or moving the goalposts, whatever sayings. Where when you're playing a game and it's like you want that established world where it's like, what are the
Mhm.
rules within this world so that I can slip into it without thinking, without doubting it, without asking myself, is this what would whatever. So there's very strict rules for ghosts here. The ghosts in this world are wet, which started as a running joke and turned into something just far more profound that I won't spoil. But ghosts in this world are damp. Like that's how you might know a ghost is around or passed through you. Like this immediate sense of, I don't know, clamminess comes over you. If there's too many ghosts in a room, like the room might get a little terranium-ish. So
Humidity rises.
right, exactly. And then there's things like Engelbert will say like he can only pick up certain objects, and it's weight based. So you can't pick up like a metal crowbar, but he can pick up like a hat. Things that are lightweight. So
Can he turn pages of a book? You mentioned earlier it might be nice for him to have somebody turn pages of the book, but within the rules of your own game, would he in fact or not be able to turn the pages of a book?
Right.
And I mean, it would ruin them, I guess, with moisture, right? But he technically maybe might be able to.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. Because it's like he could turn a page if he needed to, but if he was to like handle the book, like try to read the whole thing, let's say, or carry it with him for any extended period of time, then his dampness would waterlog the book for sure. So it's like, yeah, maybe he could get away with a quick page turn without ruining the whole thing, but he couldn't like get through a whole book without ruining the pages and everything falling apart.
Poor guy.
Paper is a bit of an obstacle for Engelbert. But again, and to those listening, it's like it's pretty, I guess, clear at this point where it's like setting boundaries to work within, or else you don't want that like Superman effect where it's like Engelbert can just do all the things and solve all the problems because ghost, because then that just wouldn't be fun or interesting from a puzzle point of view. So
right, that makes sense. Okay, so there's stuff that he can do that in the real world to affect it, but not like in any huge way. Like Engelbert's not able to drive a car.
Right, exactly. There's a few like gags in the game too where he just kind of reminds the player like there's this I'll repurpose it to a car where he'll just say to Oliver like Oliver will be like, you want to ride with me? And he'll be like, no, but I will sit next to you floating at the exact speed of the car to maintain the illusion that I'm actually sitting in the seat next to you. But really, he's he has to kind of move and float with the car because he's not solid. And that was super nerdy.
So he's doing it just to be nice, kind of like he's like, I'll sit next to you and we'll do the thing, but just know, like, I don't need to be sitting here next to you.
Right, and it's also because there was times where I questioned it. I'm like, yeah, but why would he be doing this? And I'm like, well, if I was a ghost, like I would do things that would help me feel human. Like even though I don't need to use the door. Like it might humanize me to keep using doors. Does that make sense? So, because it's like,
well, I mean, part of it is like his own feeling about it, right? Because he has pride. Engelbert, like it's the time period and it's his personality. Like he is a prideful, as in he won't just schlep around all day. There's a certain presentation and behavior in life. He needs to be a certain way. So he really does care.
Right. Exactly. So to him, it's like it's. Yeah, like he's a ghost. He could just float through the side of the house wall. Why doesn't he just do that? And it's like, well, it's his dignity is at stake. He feels more dignified using a door as he would when he was alive, because that's what people do. Right. They use doors. They don't just willy-nilly float through the wall. Like, yeah. So I guess that is a lot to his personality or whatever. And then the other thing I'll say too is in this world, ghosts can taste whatever is through them. So like,
yum.
So this is, and again, this really helps with boundaries, because it's like if Engelbert can taste everything he's holding or floats through, then he'll be a little bit more hesitant to float through or hold certain things because he can taste it.
Which is pretty funny. Okay, so if you were telling somebody like advice on how to make a game, would you suggest them doing a duo? Like, why did you choose to have the two of them together? You kind of touched on that earlier, but why would somebody else want to?
Right. That's a good point. I don't know. Because I think I wanted the ability to switch to players, to character swap, more than I necessarily wanted a duo. Obviously that they come hand in hand there. I do think there's maybe not enough duos in adventure games.
Right. Like Sam and Max.
Yeah, exactly. Enough like classic, like Yeah, duos. Like there's groups often, like Thimbleweed Park or Resonance, um, obviously Day of the Tentacle and things like that, where you get like a group of people that you switch between. But as far as like an actual duo, there's not a ton of them. So I think part of me was trying to provide more of that because I like duos. Everybody likes a good buddy cop sort of film or whatever.
Hmm.
The only rule I really made was I refused to do the straight guy stupid guy thing,
Hmm.
and not to at all like shit on it or anything because I appreciate it immensely in many different films and games and stuff like that. But that's just it. It's just been done a lot
Right.
where like the one guy is the again the David Spade and the other guy's the Farley. Like
Yeah.
you get like the straight cop and dumb cop and like is that's especially a temptation in comedy because if you have one
Right.
of them being very stupid,
Hmm.
stupid is fun and silly and funny and somewhat I don't want to say easy to write for, but it's I mean stupid is funny. There we go. So I kind
Hmm.
of refuse that for myself. I'm like, we're not gonna do a stupid character. Like Oliver makes some bad decisions, don't get me wrong, especially if you choose to, kill him in the way that he will die. So he's capable of making bad decisions, childlike just poor judgments, but for the most part he's more irreverent and um irreverent's probably the best word for Oliver. He's more irreverent and jokey. Like he might say stupid things, but I hope that the audience kind of gathers that he knows it's not true.
Oh,
Like
you just pulled it right out of my brain. I was like, he's almost like he's doing it on purpose because he likes to play the game that he's in his life. Like he likes to do the back and forth. He likes that kind of he likes not ticking off Engelbert, but he likes bouncing off of him with like the kind of thing that they do back and forth. Like it's really it's funny and it's kind, but it's also like a little bit sharp and it's a little bit unexpected. Like not sharp angry, but like sharp as in like smart, like surprisingly smart. Oliver sometimes too.
right, yes. See, you're literally better to probably to answer these questions exactly because it's like it's so ingrained to me at this point. I'm like, well, how does it actually come across? Um,
Hmm.
right. So would you say he comes across stupid or like when he's being stupid? I guess you kind of already answered, but it's like when he's being stupid, does he seem stupid?
No, he seems fun and charming and not even naive so much with what he does, but like I don't know, amicable and amusing and fun. He wants to play a game a little bit, and he's like, why not? Like life is kind of fun, but he's also willing to check in with his bud and see if everything's okay. But like neither of them want to get super duper duper sentimental, but like, yeah, he's got a lot of depth actually for who seems on the surface to be just such a sweet, fun-loving, goofy character. And sometimes in the game he does unexpected stuff. You're like you click on something and all of a sudden he's doing something that you didn't think that he would actually do. Or yeah, he's not like anybody else.
Perfect, and that's exactly the goal, right? Because I was like, I don't want I don't want to do a trope here. Like, I don't want to do like caricatures of the types of characters that we normally see. Like, I wanted the characters to be unique, and I guess that helps me articulate too to myself that while Engelbert and Oliver don't have a lot in common, the one thing they do have in common is going for the laugh kind of as a high priority. Like, there's a line in the game where Oliver's like, "Hey, Engelbert, tell me when you see the ghost." Like they're there to on a case, so it's like when they show up to a new case, it's up to obviously to Engelbert to tell Oliver, hey, there's the ghost over there, because Oliver can't see any other ghosts. So he's like,
Mhm.
Engelbert, tell me when you see the ghost, and he's like, I will, unless it would be funny not to. And then Oliver's like, I respect that. Like, yeah, okay, that's fair. Like if there's potential for a joke by you not telling me, I respect that.
Rules of engagement, though. I mean, because they've
Yeah.
been working on it for such a long time, and during the game, even in fact in the demo, there's a bit of a flashback that gives you an idea of where the dynamic comes from, and it stays consistent all the way through. I love it though, and they do grow together. So you can even see that even in just the game itself, they do grow together in a neat way, even though it's just a week, right? I mean, how much can a person change in 7 days? But a little bit, actually.
Right. I tried to show like I tried to do that naturally in a sense where it's like certain days call for certain moods and things like this. So there's like a day in the game where just Engelbert's just very grumpy. He's just in a bad mood that day, and Oliver's like he hasn't been sleeping well lately either. So like they're at each other's throats a little bit, and the idea for that is and I would I guess file this under the advice thing as far as like angles to take would be implementing these like natural ways that we all act and behave helps with writing, because it's like I'm on day 5. There's been a ton of dialogue up until this point, and like I'm wanting for something fresh within the same 2 characters in the same world, and it's like, well, how about today Engelbert's just grumpy, and all of a sudden that changes like the entire writing aspect of that day, where it's like, okay, well, I'm writing him grumpy, and all of a sudden like bad mood grumpiness like just breeds different perspectives on things for him that day. I did something similar in the last day in day 7 where it's raining and cold and they're outside for a while, and Oliver's just super cold and pissed, and he just wants to be inside, and the player's making him look at all this flavor text, and and that plays out. But yeah, little things like that were late game things I was learning and teaching myself, like, hey, change little tiny things up just to give you a whole different like perspective on the writing.
Right. Okay.
I wanted to ask you real quick, how would you describe Engelbert?
Like he's not the kind of personality that can't be bothered with it, but he plays on purpose for fun the kind of personality that can't be bothered with it. He almost like, it's like sometimes he'll just roll his eyes and be like, oh, that's silly, but then he'll like egg Oliver on right back at the same time. So maybe if you were watching, you'd be like, oh man, Oliver's always pissing off Engelbert, but actually if you watch it, it's like Engelbert's getting one up on Oliver, and the dynamic is really funny how they bounce off of each other that way. And like sometimes he's so human. Sometimes he's wistful, and sometimes, like you said, he is sad, or sometimes he's happy and he's hopeful, or he's excited. Like throughout the game, he displays all of these super relevant and valid emotions that give, considering how 2D of a game is, which is what we're going to be talking next a little bit, which is graphic styling. But outside, even though he's a 2D character, he's got a 3D personality for sure. Like he's not a curmudgeon. He pretends he's a curmudgeon sometimes.
Right. I like that. I feel like, does it make sense in a weird way if I say that Engelbert is a little bit like a house cat? Like he has this kind of like naughtiness about him, where like, because it's like at the end of the day, he is dead and has been on Earth for way too long, like 200 years or whatever the math is, less than that. But every now and then that gets the better of him, where he just, kind of like how a cat will just knock something off the counter just to see things happen, just for the chaos.
He's
of
just
it all.
like, fuck it.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
Like, fuck it. I am just bored, so why not? That's awesome.
Yeah, I see that. No, it's good. There's definitely this playfulness. Like they get each other back and forth, but I think in the end it definitely evens out. Like, because Engelbert pretty much came into Oliver's life with a big gotcha, and they've been playing ever since.
Yeah, and I'll round out their dynamics by saying that they both of them default to the humor, like I kind of gave that example earlier, where it's like that's the one thing they do have in common is they respect and appreciate the comedy coming first. But that doesn't mean that like when life gets serious or real, let's say, that doesn't change how you interact with people. So it's like you're not going to be jokey all the time, even if you highly value comedy. So when something goes really wrong, Engelbert switches gear to more of a mentor, and there's signs of that, like, at the start of a day where Engelbert is, and this is me, my kid's dad in Engelbert now, where I'll be like, what can I show, through this game, just very quietly and subtly, like nudge my kid. And I, for that matter, I guess anybody playing, I don't think kids are playing it besides my own when I force him, but how can I inject like some life lesson-y stuff into this? And so by having Engelbert be like a mentor to Oliver, like he might nudge him to like to have his own affairs in order before he goes out into the world and tries to help people put their affairs in order, right? So like he's trying to nudge Oliver to realize his potential. Yeah, that's exactly it. So right. There's these little moments, throughout the day, or when appropriate, let's say, where Engelbert will step in and be like, hey man, before we go, make sure you have your own shit together. Like, sort that out, and then we'll leave. And Oliver, immediately hit him with like and do the thing. But point being is like there's little natural moments that present themselves to be able to use Engelbert as more of a mentor. And then obviously when things go like wrong and there's trouble afoot, which the overarching aspect of the game. So it's very quickly.
Can we talk about that? Yeah, I wanted to even ask that next. Like, okay, so your game is divided up into 7 days or 7 chapters, and each of those chapters has a contained story, but the whole game has an overarching story that's like bigger than each day. So, it all kind of ends up working together in that way. Why did you end up going with that decision? I personally love it because I've always, games like Gabriel Knight, games that have like all these different layers of story. I think Gabriel Knight has like 6 or 7 of them, right? It fascinates me that you've gone with that choice, but I'm really glad you did.
Yeah, no, and a great shot with Gabriel Knight, because that was definitely an influence as far as choosing to do this in days or cases or whatever. And just decide, like, I'm not going to be, I feel like it would be impolite to name names on this one. So I'm just going to say that I had played a game that was broken into cases and there wasn't an overarching story, and I noticed that there wasn't. So that was the main reason. Like, why do an overarching story? And it's just I felt the absence of one in a game I had played that was all just cases, individual cases. And it was still fun. It was still a great game, but it was like it was missing like some meat on the bone, like some substance or whatever. So that was basically the inspiration there. I'm like, I want to do like an overarching story and have it just sprinkled in, not off the bat, but like I guess I could speak factually where it's like it's in day 4. Is that right? Yeah, day 4 is the first time that it reveals itself, and yeah, I guess like it's a bit spoilery, so I'll just say it reveals itself in day 4, and it's just there, just kind of there in the background a little tiny bit until the end, and day 7 kind of focuses around what's been building, and it gets its due or whatever. But yeah, it was for substance. And I'll just add too with the overarching story thing. I basically this is a big game. It's a long game. It seems to be I don't know, but somewhere around 14 to 16 hours if you're just getting through the game, mostly playing as Oliver, not stopping to like smell the roses or whatever, like just getting through the game. And then if you switch back and forth and really like exhaust all of the hotspots as both characters, then it's more like 20 to 24 hours. So so it's a big game, and basically the idea that I had going in was, well, first of all, it was kind of like our episodes, and I was worried I wouldn't make a long enough game.
Whoops.
Right, exactly like our episodes. But yeah, so doing cases, my idea was like just to play to all of ours deteriorating attention spans these days, where it's like I don't know how sustainable like a 16 to 20 hour adventure game is these days with just one story. But if it's 7 cases, which is kind of just constantly changing, each one's only X amount of hours, then it just feels like all these different things, and it's just a lot better for the pacing of the story, basically, is to break it into cases. But the risk of that would be this feeling of like, I don't know, wanting for like a moral of the story, like at the end of Simpsons episodes, what do we all learn today, kind of thing. Like I think we all kind of crave that in a possibly even subconscious sort of way, where it's like you really want to feel you really get the sense of fulfillment, I guess, from tying it all together. So hopefully I'm striking a good chord of like best of both worlds, where it's 7 cases, so it's changing just enough to keep interest, but then there's the overarching story, which should provides a sense of accomplishment.
Okay, cool. What about the game design itself?
The game design itself is like, it's interesting how much of the interface decides that for you, right? So I went with the Sierra interface, and Anna, you're probably like the biggest fan of the Sierra interface because it gets a lot of shit online, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you're
And I
always
mean, you've compensated for it too, which is cool, because I did want to bring that up, because you've made a game that gives a best of a few different worlds. And you even added in features that make people like my kids, if they're playing the game, a little bit happier too, with the ability to control your character.
right, right. Yeah, with like you mean like the keyboard stuff and everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I don't actually. This is weird. I, I don't know if I like the Sierra. I like the drop down menu. Okay, I really like the Sierra interface. I just don't like the right mouse click cycling, as Anna very well knows. This has dominated many conversations that we've had, but it's like people really struggle with the right click cycle. Like nobody, it's very rare somebody goes from the look and they cycle all the way through to walk and land on walk. It's always like cycle through, there's walk, whoop, they missed it, cycle through again, okay, they got it the second time. But like 600 times a gameplay in a gameplay, right? So it's like I've never been crazy about that. And we both have a proclivity for, I don't know, that's the wrong word, but we both have a soft spot for AGI games, and that was arrow based navigation. And because Phantom Fellows, you only go left or right. Like, yeah, okay, Engelbert can float up or down, but like you're basically 90% of the game you're just going left and right. So you don't need arrows, don't get in the way of that. You're never doing like an awkward like up arrow, up left, like how you would go downstairs in King's Quest if you didn't have a diagonal key or know about it, which I didn't. Um, so I guess I'm saying the perspective lends itself really nicely to arrow key, or thanks to Anna, the game also has WASD. You can use either one, and that was all Anna's idea, which was an awesome idea, because the other thing I did for players that don't like the Sierra interface is I tried to come up with a really memorable, simple keyboard layout where it's 1, 2, 3, easy as LIT. So obviously LIT is, well, maybe not obviously, but LIT is lit. So you keep lit in your mind. That's what the kids are saying. We all know it by now. Even our generation knows lit. We might be a little slow to catch up on like based and Riz and shit like that, but we know lit. And so 1, 2, 3 LIT. So 1 is look, 2 is interact, and 3 is touch. So look, interact, touch. That's lit. 1, 2, 3.
Look, interact, and talk.
Oh my god! Right, I fucked it up. I had one thing to do. Yeah.
It's
It's miraculous that we've gotten this far, honestly. Yeah. Watch the show just quickly devolve into what we usually are from this point out. Yes, thank you. Let's look, interact, talk. And so as you can, the listeners, you could picture like that upper left quadrant of the keyboard. So you've got WASD, you've got 1, 2, 3, you've got tab for inventory, escape for the menu, just like your typical Sierra or adventure game stuff at that point. Escape is always menu, tab's always inventory. So yeah, anyway, what I'm trying to say is I tried to offer a nice alternative to the Sierra interface. Now, real quick, the reason why, because at this point it's like, well, if you're doing all this effort to like get away from it, why did you do it? And the reason I did it is, I guess because I don't like the alternatives more. I really don't like as our listeners know, we've talked about this plenty of times. I don't like the single or double click like Steel Sky modern interface where you click on a character and the game decides what happens based on what should happen. Where it's like, the 2-click system. It's like you click on the person and you either give them an item because you have the item, or you talk to them. The game decides. I don't like that. I don't like the lack of agency and exploration behind that. So I guess ultimately the reason I went with CR1 is because it offers the most amount of exploration. And especially with a comedy, like I could see if it wasn't a comedy, like maybe it's not necessary to have all these options, but as a comedy, like the ability to, like, okay, you've been hired by a girl who runs, actually I don't want to spoil that. You've been hired by a girl, you go to the case, as Oliver, you can touch her, look at her, or talk to her, and you'll get unique responses, because Oliver is a real person with consequences if he touches this woman uninvitedly. So there's a line of response that's unique. Engelbert is a ghost, so like, what if he tries to, moral gray area? Well, how's the game going to handle that? You'll bloody find out. But the point is like, if you have the option to look, talk, and touch, and with anything in the world, for a comedy, it lends itself too many opportunities for me to pass up. So yeah.
Yeah,
Seriously.
there's like fodder everywhere. Like, I guess you're looking, you kind of remind me of Seinfeld in that he says everything in life is fodder for his comedy. He's going to write it down. He's going to pay attention to it. He's at a party. He's on a bus. He's having a conversation. And I feel like you kind of do that a little bit too.
Right, 100%. I mean, and you even know because I think I've showed you my little document where it's like, I mean, I'll say something to Anna like in our messenger, and she'll be like, that was funny, or that was this or that, and I'll be like, oh, copy and paste it in my document, using it. So like a lot of our conversations end up in the game just because it's like, hey man, if it turned out to be funny, exactly what Seinfeld said. Like it's all potential for jokes. Um, so yeah, it was to wrap it up in a bow. This game was all about encouraging and rewarding exploration. Because to me, and God, our listeners know this because I've banged on about this for a long time now. I've been quite a dick about it at times, but it's like, I feel like just getting through the game is against the spirit of what an adventure game is. Like an adventure, by definition, isn't the destination. It's literally the journey. Like that's what an adventure is. It's not getting to the place and now we're there. It's everything but that.
No,
And
that's going to Walmart. It's not an adventure. You're going grocery shopping.
exactly. Thank you. And it's like there's something there's circuits in our brain that are just too old and have been useful to us for too long to shut off the desire to hit the target, to win, to accomplish the task. So like I get it. I get why we try to just win the adventure game. But one, you only get dopamine hits when you work for it. So it's like if you're just given everything on a platter, then you're not going to remember it fondly. You're just going to be like, that was the game I played. Yeah, it was fun. But like it's the times that you really had to like stop and think about it or work for it. Like only then do you get the rush of like, I did it. I accomplished the thing. Because you accomplished it. You weren't given it. And that's this weird line of adventure games sometimes where it's just a little too like, here you go. There's the thing in the room you need. And there's only one, do this with it and then you'll be on your way. So with this game, I'm trying to walk a line where it allows people to just get through it if they want to, but also for all of us who grew up like looking at everything in every room, maybe even you completed Space Quest 3 and then you went back and just looked at everything and just soaked in every line that there was and tried to find everything that the developers hadn't thought of. Like this game is largely for you. And so that's the point, is to encourage you to explore as both characters, see what a cynical ghost would say about a beautiful spring flower, and see what Oliver would say or do with it, and hopefully maybe get a laugh or a cool fact or whatever for doing so. So yeah, it's all about rewarding exploration. I needed the Sierra interface to do it. And the last thing I'll say before I finally breathe is a little later into development, Perfect Tides came out. And that was really nice for me because it did incredibly well. Meredith Grand's game, and that was the Sierra interface. And ever since that game came out, I had to breathe like this sigh of relief. I'm like, okay, I was feeling a little alone out here, guys. Like a lot of people are like, wow, that was a brave choice. And I'm like, what do you mean? Why did you word it that way? What do you mean brave? I didn't know it was brave.
That's cute. Okay, so you like who are you? You're a guy out there on your own making a game. Like you don't have a development team. You don't have like somebody doing the music and somebody doing the art. If somebody was to go off and try to do that same adventure, go off in the world with their cape and just like make a game happen, what is it that you've learned that they could maybe take from it so that they don't have to learn it too? They can just learn it by listening to the episode. So much easier.
Right, for sure. Okay. Phew. You got to get yourself an Anna. Right? Like for real. You have to find somebody who like I mean, granted, if your wife or husband or spouse or partner is into adventure games, then cool. But it's like you need somebody who you're very close with, who loves adventure games, because otherwise it's all just in your head, and like you'll very quickly not be able to tell what direction you're headed. Like there's been so many times where I went to Anna and was just like, is this insane? Like, does this at all make sense? Like, and sometimes the answer is, yeah, it perfectly makes sense. And then sometimes the answer was, well, but you need somebody who knows adventure games to bounce things off of. It doesn't, it can just be just a friend, a Facebook person, whatever the case is. But you need somebody there, especially with puzzle design, to be able to bounce stuff off of. And then otherwise, I had to learn how to program, and that was fine.
You've taught me some little things, but the depth of which, like, okay, back when you used to talk about programming, it seemed all foreign and wild. And now you're just like, oh, yeah, just the if and here, go in, put a parentheses here, you can fix it, do this over here, delete this line. Like,
right. I got my 10,000 hours now. Yeah. But it's still, it's like learning a very tiny language, I guess is the way I put it. And that's, I don't know how to speak any other languages like every other American, basically. It was an unnecessary dig on my fellow Americans, but because overseas it's like it's pretty common, like that people know more than one language. And I guess I'm just saying that to say is like I don't have a head start. It's not like I'm already good at knowing other languages, like most Europeans would be. It's like I just don't. Sorry. Right. So point being is that it's almost like learning just a very small language where there's not thousands of new words you have to learn. There's just like 100. And it is ultimately at the end of the day, it just comes down to just eventually memorizing a lot of this. But I would encourage anybody who's extremely right-brained and chaotic, high in openness, low in conscientiousness that I am, to say, like, you can do this. This is what Trolls, what Space Quest Historian did for me. When he went on YouTube and put the AGS tutorials out there, and he's just like, you can do it. If you're like me, you can do this. And I'm like, I'm like you. Like we share that, like let's say more arty than mathy type of personality. And it's totally doable. It's like the whole premise of programming, as it turns out to be, is you just have to find the if. You just have to find the thing to bounce off of. Like once you have an if, then you can have an else. And you're good to go. And yeah, that's probably not super helpful. But the point is like, you guys know me, and I figured it out. You'll be fine.
Okay, so then, I mean, what does it take to cross the finish line? What have been your biggest hurdles and challenges from the very beginning? Obviously, learning to code and figuring out how to put everything together. I imagine going back later in the game and revisiting old code when you because you went and did like a whole revamp of kind of like the game and the graphics and everything. I recall it being a little bit frustrating when you had to encounter past Paul and you're like, man, that guy didn't know how to program much as well as I do now. That must have been one of the hurdles. What else?
That's it. It's all past me. Just relentlessly fucking myself. It's basically, yeah. I'm trying to like work my way out of the jokey answer, but it turns out the jokey answer was inside us the whole time. That's the actual answer. Okay. Here's a more eloquent way of putting it. My own lack of experience was the biggest and remains the biggest hurdle. So it's just getting those XP points, like getting out there and just, yeah, like now it's to the point where like some of the bugs that get reported, I'm like, oh, I fixed that before. I know what to do here. Things like that are really, really nice. With pixel art, like a really quick tip that remains just by far the most important thing I ever learned, besides all the basic stuff that any YouTube video will teach you about immediately, like no jaggies. The biggest thing that helped me with pixel art is go way harder in the contrast than you think. For every palette, you basically have the highlight and the low light version of it, or the color and then its highlight, or you could say the color and its shadow. I don't know, not an art major, but look at the EGA palette. There's a dark version of every color. Make sure your dark version of each of your colors is darker than you would think. Like the more contrast, the better. Until it's very suddenly not. But but that would be like my number one takeaway of learning pixel art from scratch to make this game is go hard on the contrast with your colors. learning that was huge. Right, I'm just like remembering the question. Sorry. So yeah, learning that was huge. Um, I wish AI was a thing when I started programming. It became a thing just when I had it about figured out. So it's like it's been able to help me with a few little things here, like bug fixes. I'll kind of be like, hey, what's the actual way of doing this, instead of my gigantic just mess of code way that I did it.
Yeah,
Um,
they're like, well, you definitely don't need like 60 lines there.
right, exactly. There's
How
always
about these like 4 words in a parentheses? Will that do? And you're like, well, I'm not going back and changing the whole rest of it now, but thank you.
right. Because there's like exactly. You get way too scared to touch anything. It's literally like it's like a Jenga tower with a house of cards on top of the Jenga tower. That's how I feel right now
That's
when
a
a
good
bug's
way to put
reported.
it.
I'm like, I don't want to touch anything. Are you serious?
Yeah.
Um, it's also scary. um, Goodness gracious, yeah. It's use AI. I guess that's another one. Use it, but don't trust it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's not always accurate. Sometimes I'll be like, I wonder if Paul can implement this. So I'll go to an A and I'll be like, is this something that AGS can do? And he'll be like, sure. Yeah, here's some code. Like this all looks super legitimate. So I'll pass it on and he'll be like, yeah, no, actually.
right.
Turns out that is a whole big pile of bullshit.
Right, exactly. It's constantly gaslighting. And
Mhm.
real quick, just annotation on what I just said. Don't use AI for art. I'm not saying that.
Mm-mm.
I mean, do what you want to do, but I specifically mean just for the coding aspect, especially if you're the me, if you're one of the me's in the world, the very right brain people, this stuff's very hard for, then use it. But a quick example to what Anna just said, and then this also highlights just what an incredibly amazing friend that Anna is like she'll come up with an idea that might help the game. In this case, it was, is there any way to do like a millisecond block on a mouse click so that you can't accidentally click through dialogue? Which is a
Mhm.
great idea. A lot of game engines actually have that baked in and let you do that. I know that from Cosmic Void, his engine lets him do that. AGS does not. And to the extent in which Anna is a great friend is that she'll come up with the idea and then go to AI and see if it's plausible, all before bringing it to me, just so she can come to me with this neat little package of like, here's an idea, here's why, and we both know AI is kind of bullshitty, but AI thinks you can do it. What do you think? And but to tie in a good example of how full of shit AI is like, yeah, you can do that, and it's like, okay, you can. Because sometimes AI just lies. But in this case,
Mhm.
it's like you can, but what I'd have to do is like before every single line of dialogue, I'd have to do a true false statement. And I'd have to mark it true, write the dialogue, mark it false. And,
Mhm.
and just like it just that's a bit nerdy, I recognize as I'm saying it, but it's like, yeah, you can technically do that, but it's madness. It's absolutely insane, at least retrospectively anyway, and with the wordiness of my game. So all just to say is, be careful trusting AI, but if for programming, it probably can't hurt to use it as a springboard. And then
Mhm.
the AGS community is awesome.
Mhm.
They've always been there for me. Chris and Crimson Wizard um, are amazing, and a bunch of Eduardo and Eric or Ario. Like there's some really really solid guys out there and girls that have been tremendous amount of help. So AGS definitely has your back, and it's getting really good as an engine. Like there's a baked in Android port now, and um, shout out to Chad Armstrong, who's like essential in me getting a Mac port to work. So good community, good people out there.
Mhm. I would say so. Okay. So how has this game evolved? Like, so I was mentioning just in the other question that you kind of did a bit of a major overhaul. You overhauled the graphics and the story. I think from when you first started creating the game towards the end of it, when you were done, as you were kind of like, you didn't have a preconceived notion of what the story was, and the story kind of built on itself. And from what I saw, the characters just, they started to evolve and change. And maybe what you had as a rudimentary idea of their personalities shifted over time. So how did you deal with those kinds of changes since like the days of its initial demo?
Right. I guess visually speaking, I redesigned the entire game about 2 years ago, as we touched on, and that was all a result of having close to, let's say, my 10,000 hours of pixel art experience, where it was like, okay, like I feel like I can now. I feel like I can draw what I want to draw, and it draw sounds generous because it really is, especially my resolution. It's more just placing pixels, but it was a combination of that and just a random epiphany I had one day, which was to base the game in Colorado. So I live in Colorado, like in the Boulderish area nowadays, and the reason I live here is because I want to live here. Like I chose Colorado. I lived in many different places in my life and been lucky enough to travel around to all kinds of places, and I was like, this is the most beautiful place that I've seen in America. And there's probably quite a few that are like tied with it for beautiful, but the people are super dope, and it's just, I love Colorado. I love my home. So I'm proud to, like, let's say, represent it, and things I didn't feel in New Jersey or Florida, for example. Sorry guys, I'm sorry everybody lives there. I love you both in your own ways. Not you Florida. No, I'm sorry, that's not true. It's a little true. Anyway,
you can say it because you lived there for a while. You would never dream of saying it if you didn't, but you got a little bit of
exactly. I've been hardened by it. Yeah. The taxes I paid while living there went into a good pothole or two's fixing. So actually, that's a Colorado problem, potholes, because it's just always hot in Florida. The road doesn't crack. They're quite nice. Anyway, enough about Florida's roads or whatever.
Right. You were going to talk about the evolution, perhaps, of the character dynamics over the course of the game. I guess it must have been as you fleshed them out. They just not even that the story shifted, but just how they would communicate shifted a little.
I can't believe that's what I was talking about when I ended up so far lost at sea there with the Florida thing. Okay, thank you very much for bringing that back. Yeah, the characters, I think I said earlier in this episode that a lot of things just accidentally worked out, and this was one of them, because the foundation for the characters, nothing really changed. I just became more confident in them and had more faith in, like, they were there all along. Like this ability for Engelbert to be a mentor was accidentally baked in just by the age gap. Oliver, it's their backstory I don't go into in this game, but Oliver hints a couple of times throughout the game that he definitely doesn't have parents anymore. And it's also indicated that he lost at least one of them when he was young, going back to my own thing. So point being is, like, there were things baked into the game as early as the first day, because that little cutscene happens after day one. So in other words, I did this a long time ago without thinking these little implications that maybe Oliver doesn't have parents. And then, like, come day 4, when I want Engelbert to be like a mentor for Oliver in a certain scene, it just so happens that I laid the groundwork for Oliver not really having parents around, and he could really kind of use Engelbert's guidance. And Engelbert, while it's never actually said, we know that he died a little bit after his prime, and, like, he probably didn't have kids. So, he does have this little desire to help Oliver reach his potential. And he does make it clear to a ghost at one point that he's basically refusing closure and to move on from this plane or whatever because of Oliver. Like, he's got a job to do, let's say.
Right.
So he's just a lot of serendipitous things like that just happen to have worked out. It's a flimsy answer, but it's true.
It's a flimsy answer, but it's true. No, I like it. Okay. So in your game, like, almost every puzzle, especially as you get towards, like, later parts of the game after you open up the world map and you can travel on it, is they all have different solutions. So you can solve the puzzle within the day that you're in, or you can solve a puzzle by wandering off into the wide, wide world and picking something up. Why did you offer multiple solutions? Like, other than it giving more Steam achievements, what's the reason for it?
Right. That was another just wish listy thing where I'm like, as far as asking myself the question of, like, what kind of game do you want to play? Like, I want alternate puzzle solutions. Like, just as a fan of the genre, like, that's when adventure games, I think, are really shining, when they have just different ways of doing things. And something that's irked me that I've mentioned on episodes before is, like, there's so many times where you have to do a really puzzles can feel more convoluted if you're fastening something together in replacement of an item you saw earlier in the game. Right. So it's like, I can't think of a great example. I can't think of any example offhand, but let's just pretend that the cat hair mustache, you're doing that, but a few days earlier you had seen That's a terrible example. I'm immediately backed into a corner with that one. I'm sorry. The point being is,
Moon logic.
yeah, like it can, it's always just been a tough pill for me to swallow when it's like you need a tool and you solve the tool earlier, and the character just at no point just brings up like, hey, why don't we just go get that tool from home because I saw it there earlier.
Mhm.
So in this game, I really wanted to do that. Like I've been kind of loosely calling it like real world puzzle logic, where it's like if you see something in the real world, like just go get it, and it could work. So with the fast travel thing, that came, these two things will, hopefully I'll be able to weave these together in a second, but the fast travel thing was my other wish listing of really wanting a game that felt open worldy, and I think we actually on our very last episode got quite poetic about Lytton and how we felt as kids like this, being immersed in this giant open world because you could go to Caroline's Diner, or go to the park or go to the station. Like you had this agency to just travel around town, and it created this feeling of like being in this living community. And like, oh, there's Carol behind the counter offering us a pie. That's classic Carol with her pies. Like she's always doing that. And it makes the world come to life. So I really wanted that, and to the point where there's a diner in my game that you can go back to, and Oliver has a rivalry with the chef there that I really enjoy. They just fucking hate each other, and it's really fun. But but I wanted that, so I was like, okay, let's do this. After starting in day 3, the map unlocks, and you could travel back to previous locations for the rest of the game. And so I was like, what I'll do is this is how I'll compartmentalize the alternate solutions. The alternate solutions will be located off location. And when the map unlocks, the characters make it very clear you never have to leave the location to solve a puzzle. Because I felt like it would be too overwhelming if you weren't sure like where the hell the solution was. Because then all of a sudden an open big world is too open and big. Like I don't even know where to go to get the thing to even begin solving this puzzle. So it's like, let's just quarterize that and say you never need to leave the location to solve the puzzles needed. You can always just stay there. Cool. But if you saw something around town that might help, go give it a shout, give it a try. And then in reward for your exploration, if there isn't, let's say, an item that you now need so you can get it, then there will at least be like a fresh interaction to have with the characters. And I don't know, since I'm talking, it's so nice to talk about this to our audience, just being adventure game nerds, because we know things to be annoying. Like there was some of the worst parts of, let's say, the King's Quest series. I'm thinking of King's Quest, I think 5 right now, maybe 6 specifically, but it's like you never knew what character you had to go talk to, but you had to go find like one damn character and exhaust a dialogue tree to be able to move forward. And I don't like that. So what I mean by like go talk to characters from previous days is like just go get a laugh. Like hopefully it'll just be funny. Like hopefully maybe Oliver will have like left something there, in a way that's a disaster. And okay, one thing I'll say is, so Oliver has like a love interest in this game, and she's the farmer's daughter, and you work for the farmer in day 2. So if you go back to the farmer and he now knows that you've been laying on top of his daughter, it changes the dynamic, right? So there's like some laughs. So the point being is like you should be able to go around the world and have these fun interactions and catch up with the breathers and the floaters alike, and if the floaters didn't take rest, and just get rewarded for going around town and having fun.
Okay, so it's kind of your world, like, and I mentioned it earlier in the episode, it's dynamic, and it's the same with the characters. I mean, real life isn't static. People know things happen, time passes, and so that's the nature of your game, really, all the way through. It's all very dynamic. It all balances, and there must be a lot of creative influences that have got you going and kind of stimulated you during the making of this. What's the art, the music, the media, like what has influenced and shaped your work for it to be? And it's kind of a big question, because I'm asking you, like, artistic and visually, in writing and in music, outside of like game design, because we know LucasArts, Sierra, the games that we love, but those other 3 aspects, we don't really talk a lot about that side of your influence.
Okay, right. This has potential to be like the overly self-indulgent response, so I'll try to keep it kind of concise. So on a serious note, I really like philosophy and psychology. So And in the last 4 years, I've gone pretty hard on that stuff. So that sounded oddly Irish, didn't it? Pretty hard on it.
And well, that was Scottish. Damn it! All right.
Was it?
No, then mine was. Yours wasn't. You're fine.
A fun fact: in Irish, the word look is the name Luke. See, it's a good little shortcut. Luke, look at this. It's great. That might be all right. But look, we're offending everybody.
Yeah, we are.
Because we all decided that's offensive for some reason. That was a bad call, society. You fucked that one up. Because impressions were hilarious. All right, anyway. Goodness. Okay, right. So I like psychology, philosophy. So Carl Jung has been a huge one for me. That's one. I like Nietzsche a lot. What I can understand of Nietzsche, I like a lot. I really like Dostoevsky. Crime and Punishment is like that was big. I'm catching myself there. Like those are the moments where I'd go on too long. So just yeah. Is there anything else? I don't. Carl Rogers. I actually kind of want to mention him on purpose because he's a phenomenologist, and actually I can't spoil that. Okay, never mind. But there's something there. There's something interesting there.
Teaser.
Phenomenology is a very cool subject and a very, very fun word. So there's that. But okay, PJ, that covers the kind of more serious side of the interest that I have.
The writing and stuff.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
Thank you, because it does. You reeled me in. That does influence some of the writing in the game, especially. Engelbert does every now and then goes off on like a philosophical musing, if you will, and just he gets a little poetic for a moment or two because he's dead and he can quickly get sad and reflect on what it is to be alive, and
he can lament. He needs to do that occasionally. Yeah,
exactly. Yes, exactly. He's got a lot of baggage being a ghost.
Except it's really light. So
yeah, hopefully it's whimsical and playful and fitting the mood, let's say. Yeah. But in case that slaps anybody out of nowhere, like, well, what do you mean the ghost in this comedy gets philosophical sometimes? Well, it's like, don't forget he's dead, and that's a lot for him. So
he has a lot of time to think too. I mean, he's not exactly sleeping at night. I mean, if he's not a robot plugging himself into charge, so he's really got. And I know, like, okay, a brain is not necessarily dynamic when you're dead in the same way as when you're alive, but he's clearly able to retain information and compound that information and form new judgments and change his opinions, which is interesting to me too. He's not like stuck in the exact same mindset he was when he died or in the exact same mood. I mean, he's a morphing character.
Right. I like that. I hadn't really thought about that before. You're exactly right, though. Right. He's still capable of personal growth, which I guess plays the theme in the game in a sense, too, because all the ghosts for all the cases have different needs. So like one of them to get you started, and this is in the demo in day one, he's just like a pranky, jokey ghost who likes to fuck with people. Because I think we know that as in trope world of ghosts that there's some, there's ones that just like to apparently fuck with people. But then there's some ghosts that have like, hang-ups and really need to like seek closure and things like that. And a lot of times, not a lot of times, but in the instances that's appropriate in the game where the ghost seeks closure to move on from this world, it is them completing their own little character arc and finding the answers that they've been seeking and things like that.
That's where psychology comes in. Yeah. Okay. I could totally see the connection. What about the artists that you've admired in the past, specifically towards visual artistry?
That's a great question. MC Escher has always been a favorite of mine, which I don't think there's anything there influence wise.
Well, stuff that makes you think when you look at it. I mean, it's not just a picture. You're like, look at that. It's a really nice house. It's like, oh, what's the dynamic that's happening here? What is it that the creator's getting me to think about when I'm looking at it? What were they potentially thinking about when they looked at it? Because your art in the game isn't exactly, it's 2D, 2.5D, but it's not two-dimensional. Like there's thought, there's things up on the wall, or the lighting reflects in a certain way, or there's a personality in it, where the moon is, where the stars are. I can see something out the window. Can I click on things out the window? It's like, oh, or just the window. Oh, it turns out I can. Like,
right. No, that's good stuff. Okay, all right. Well, yeah, because you're helping me understand. I guess visual arts. I really like. like set work on in movies, like dynamic visuals in that sense, as well as architecture. But I guess I could say like a film like Blade Runner goes like a long way for me, where it's just the atmospheric, yeah, just the atmosphere, and the way that set pieces like complement each other and create worlds. And yeah, I guess I would say movie sets would be like my favorite form of visual art.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and before I forget, I'm going to backtrack really quick to say, because you brought up a really good point about like, not having a physical brain. And I've always in when I'm, for the sake of the game, I've put a lot of weight onto like our ununderstanding of how memories work and where we might pull them from, and kind of impose that onto ghosts as to suggest that that's where the soul is operating from, I guess you'd say. So there's a fun thing that really just for our listeners here to try in the game. It's not like announced anywhere, and very few people will find it, even though it is an achievement. But you can talk to, if you see a picture or a poster of somebody, of a person, then you can talk to it as Engelbert. Specifically 3 instances in the game. And that was just a fun way to try to handle what it's like. This is what Anna, you had brought up not sleeping. Because Engelbert never sleeps. And it was a fun way to kind of handle that, where he's just like, maybe the artist behind this painting has imprinted himself into it, and that's how I'm able to talk to the painting. Or maybe, and then he gives like pretty much what it really is. And he's just like I don't know, the fractured, my own fractured mind projecting different personas that I've lost control over onto these paintings, and then having a conversation with that persona. Anyway, I just wanted to mention it because it's like a tie into like the philosophical end of things, and then also like trying to balance and handle like the physical, trying to keep it believable, I guess is what I'm saying. How to make ghosts believable.
And of course, none of this ties in together at all, or even really fully works until you add music to the mix. I got to watch and listen to the process happen through the testing. As you've got a game, and it's a game, and it's funny, and there's a lot going on, and then all of a sudden these little sound effects get added in, the fire crackling and crickets in the background, or the car driving, and then all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I guess it's time to make a soundtrack. And you made a soundtrack that blends seamlessly into each and every game day, and it has the personality and the vibe of the day. It's not like a 3-minute track looping either. So where did your influence come from to make a soundtrack for this game? And talk to me just a little bit about the soundtrack, because we haven't really touched on that at all.
Right, man. Okay. Okay, I'll keep the first part of that short to say influence was pretty simple. So it's under the umbrella of like ambient synthwave. I really wanted to do just like a fun synthetic, fun 80s-ish synthetic-y soundtrack. Cause just, I don't know, I just wanted to make that music for fun. Like it was like an itch I had to scratch, let's say. That's kind of gross, but so yes, it's like an ambient synthwave, and then I don't know. Two of my bigger influences, musically speaking, especially when it comes to composing, would be John Carpenter and Vangelis. So I've kind of worded it recently as the playfulness of Carpenter's music mixed with the ambiance and mood of Vangelis, which is extremely self-serving and like way too generous to say that I've actually pulled that off. But it's fair to at least say like, hey, that was the aim. I'm not saying I like came anywhere near to what Vangelis could do, but that was at least the aim. Like the playfulness of Carpenter and the mood of Vangelis. So
wow. Well, Vangelis is very epic, right? I mean, you've got your Chariots of Fire. He's a Greek composer. He's he's quite a personality. That I could see how he could be influential.
Yeah, exactly, and especially his work with Blade Runner, where it was just like this. It was a part of the ambiance. It was a part. Not that's obvious because it's music. What am I trying to say? It was a part. It was like a part of the set. It was almost like a character in the film. It was so.
It is. Oh, that's a good way to put it. Your music is a character in your game, like absolutely. And you're going to have a soundtrack available separately too. Like it's going to be for sale on GOG and some other places too, right?
Yeah, exactly. It'll be up on GOG and Bandcamp and maybe Steam.
Cool.
But
cool.
I might leave that as like a little GOG exclusive or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's super fun. And then for advice, for people listening, I do have a couple of potentially helpful things. So if you're a solo developer who's going to also do the music, and I know that music seems to be the most commonly outsourced. So it's like a lot of devs in the adventure community do everything but the music. But if you happen to be thinking about it and you would be doing the music too, because there's a lot of programmers that are musicians, which is a strange borderline phenomena I'd like to overthink and look into later. But anyway, if you're going to be doing it all, do the music, do the soundtrack before you do the sound design, because I fucked that up. I did the sound design first, and I just wasted a lot of time. There's a lot of sound design shit that you will never hear in the game because the music competed with it to the point where I turned it off. I was going to say drowned it out, but I don't have it on anymore because that wouldn't have done it would have done a disservice to the soundtrack. So yeah, that was a lesson learned. There's a lot of cool sound, especially in the pub. Man, really spent a long time trying to get that sound. Like I had voices and like glasses falling over, like panned hard left and hard right, and it felt like very like 3D, like you're in this room, like THX kind of vibe. And then I did the score and the music's playing, and you just can't hear it. So yeah, do your score, your soundtrack before you do sound design. I mean, I don't mean sound design as far as like effects, like a door shutting. Like do that whenever. And boy, does that kind of suck. Like I didn't realize how long that was gonna all. That's not. I didn't enjoy that at all. Getting that all to sync up. That was probably my least favorite part of this.
You were so positive about it all, though. When you tell me about it at the end of the day, you'd be like, "These are the sounds I got," and listen to this, and then I play through the game and be like, "Wow, that door did shut." I don't think you really. I don't think you really explained to me how much work even that it was to do that.
Right, you were hearing me mid like dopamine high, where I'd be like, "It works, it syncs up."
It's like, but I haven't heard from you in 6 hours.
Right.
Oh,
it was pretty dark back there.
So what are some aspects that make your game stand out? Like I briefly touched on the fact that there's a map. You've got like your inventory you can bring up and you can look at your individual inventory items. What are other dynamics that are kind of neat in the game? And switching characters, right? And when do they get introduced? Stuff like that. How does it all come about? What makes this game special?
Oh, I like this. This is the things that are neat category. Okay, so we've already touched on the travel back thing. I think I might be the most proud of that. So I'm just gonna leave that here plop that here in the beginning of this. But then there is little things. Okay, so the fast travel thing, the map travel opens in day 3, unlocks in day 3. Player swap unlocks in day 2. For anybody that hasn't played the demo, understandably, because honestly, I don't like demos. You have to put one out, but like I don't like demos. But that being said, the day 1 is very short, breezy, quick introduction to the world and the characters in it. You're in and you're out. It's just like basically essentially one puzzle, maybe 1.5. So that's the reason the player swap doesn't. It all takes place in one room. Like day 1 really is like a introductory kind of, not tutorial, but like a very like, this is how it's going to be if you're in or out, let me know now kind of vibe. So anyway, that's why player swap unlocks in day 2, and then once it's unlocked, it stays unlocked, same as travel. But yeah, some other neat things. There's a quick save feature, which I really like. You hit F5 to quick save a game, and F7 to quick restore. And those are the same keys that we used in Sierra games, so they should be familiar to us. F5 was always save and F7 was always load. There's a traditional saving mechanism with little screenshots, as is common in most modern adventure games as well. But I like the quick save feature just to... Yeah, I don't know. It just feels handy. Like, oh, I got to pee. You just quick save it and off you go and whatever.
What happens if you die then? You've got a quick save feature and you've got a save feature at the beginning of the day. Now, if you die, do you have to restore your game, or do you do something a bit more modern?
Right. Great question. So there's a death a day, except for the last 2 days. And I'd really love to talk about why there isn't a death in the 7th day, but that would be crazy heavy spoilers, so I won't. But there's a good reason for there not being a death in those last 2 days. But anyway, so there's 5 deaths to find, and originally I was gonna do it old school, and then I was like, that's not fair, because we just don't play games anymore expecting to have had saved. Is that a sentence? To have had saved? Yeah. It's like, it's just it's not ingrained in us anymore. Like back in the day, like you knew, like constantly save, at least the Sierra players. And it's just, we just don't do that anymore. So it felt unfair. So I backpedaled on that. So when you die, you get a very Sierra-y punny death message and menu, and then there's just a rewind button instead of so you can quit, restore, or rewind. And obviously rewind would probably be the most common choice there, which just puts you right back to before you did the thing or whatever. And Engelbert warns you with all the deaths too, or he's like, hey, you probably shouldn't do that. And that works on it works on two ends, because it allows the player an out, and it also allows me, developmentally wise, to leave a secret autosave right there. So it's like Engelbert warns you, the game secretly autosaves it. That's where you'll get brought back to when you hit rewind. Okay, what else? So I talked earlier about the right-click mouse cycle thing and how it drives me crazy. To the point where it made Anna insecure to use it in a video she was recording of gameplay, because she knew I'd be staring at it. So what I did there, and I like this too, there's not a ton of evidence that it's working, that it's like doing what I hoped it would do, but I like to think it helps. What I theorized was that part of the reason people can't memorize the right-click cycle is because it changes based on whether or not you have inventory selected or you don't. Because in a Sierra game, for example, if you have an inventory selected, then it's going to be, let's say, 5 right clicks to get back to the beginning. If you don't have an inventory selected, it's going to be 4 clicks to get back to the beginning. And I was like, maybe that's what's fucking people up. So what I did was Oliver's inventory is represented by a fanny pack. So if you don't have inventory selected, like as a mouse cursor, then the fanny pack is there. So that way it's always a consistent amount of clicks back to the beginning again. And then while I was at it, I was like, well, we probably should do something with this little fanny pack cursor. So what I did with that is that if you have the fanny pack cursor selected, and again, it is there mostly as just a placeholder to keep things consistent. But since everything should do something, you can click it anywhere on the screen and it opens up your inventory.
For anybody, and Tab does, right? Tell me Tab does too.
Right, exactly. Tab does too, just like the like the games we grew up on. The top-down menu is also another way to get it. And then just for the few of you, I don't know, Jess and Geek, who've played the game, one short, who are listening now, like beta testers and friends, and who are like, actually, I've never once clicked that fanny pack anywhere and it did anything. Well, I just fixed that. Okay, after 4 years, I can say it finally appears to work in every situation, just as of like right now. So anyway, that was a neat little thing that I'm happy about. Goodness, what else? Oh, there's an in-game dialogue-based hint system. Yes.
Kind of a big deal, actually, because, okay, outside of a guide or a video or a strategy guide, or just asking somebody without having to leave the game, and I think kind of a big deal from what I've gotten from you talking to you about the game is keeping people immersed in the game. So, like, anytime somebody has to leave the game to go to the internet or go find a hint, they have to leave the world. And there's a chance, in this modern busy day and age that we might not come back. So by using Engelbert as an in-game hint system, you are by proxy keeping the immersion in the game. How do you manage that dynamic without like breaking the fourth wall all the time and being like, oh, just go click here?
Right. Very good points. Okay. Well, first of all, quick shout out to the God amongst men, Dave Gilbert, for that piece of advice, right? Where it was, I don't think it was. It definitely wasn't with us, because it was. We've been quoting that, let's say, for many years now. But both of us had heard Dave say that at some point on a podcast, where he's just like, hey, anytime they leave the game is a risk they won't come back. So yeah, shout out to Dave. And then this was another like accidental, just a lovely accident that just. Not accident, but it just worked out, because it's like Engelbert is already there. We've already discussed he has kind of this mentorship role over Oliver. So it makes sense that Oliver would go to Engelbert naturally and be like, hey man, what do I do? So the way I frame the hint system is that it never breaks, this game never breaks the fourth wall. I'm not a big fan of that. Okay, to be fair, the UI is where I break the fourth wall. Sometimes the UI will kind of fuck with you. In a fun way, but like the characters, the in-game world, as long as a menu isn't pulled up, like and you're in the game, it's not, let's say, paused and a menu's pulled up. Like I don't break the fourth wall, and I maintain that consistency through the dialogue hint system. So I don't want it to ever be like you're being told what to do. It's always Engelbert telling Oliver what to do, and then I guess the way I handled that was basically using the UHS Universal Hint System as my guide and template. So like I don't know, Anna, do you think that most people listening know UHS? Universal.
Yeah, I would say that like a lot of us do because the universal hint system was like this. It wasn't the hint books that you'd get, but it followed the same concept as the hint books you get. Because when you'd look at like a Space Quest 4 hint book and you'd get your little red adventure window, and you'd be like, okay, well, how do I get out of the Galaxy Galleria without the guard shooting me? The first hint will be like, well, have you tried it? And then the second hint will be a little bit more forward, like, okay, but did you do this and this? And then the third and the fourth, and then the last hint is essentially the guide telling you this is what you need to do. Okay, fast forward, this hint system online took that concept, moved it to the internet, would give you your chapters and your generalized hints, but you only actually need to reveal exactly what you, as much as or as little as you want. So you can get guided in the right direction, or they can hold your hand and put your hand on the object and say, here, take this.
Right. Very well put. Exactly. And for anybody not familiar, it's UHS. I guess that's a hyphen hints.com.
Yeah.
I just learned what a hyphen was because of short.
Aww.
Thank you. I always got it like a dash or just, I don't know, some.
Yeah, it's an M dash. The proper hyphen is an M dash. When my mom used to, and we do stuff on WordPerfect. That was a kind of a big deal. She had it set up, the program, that anytime you just put in a dash, it would give you an M dash, which was, I guess, a little bit longer and more proper.
How fancy. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So for the dialogue thing, it's Engelbert is the spiritual representative here of the Sierra guidebooks, which, thank you, and I forgot they were like that, honestly. And UHS. So you'll be like, hey, I need help right now, and by default, Engelbert will give you just a really, really vague hint, like nothing spoilery, just a tiny nudge. Like it could be as light as look around or check what you have, just a slight nudge, and then he basically, he never tells you more than you want to know. So you have to, in tiers, let's say, you have to ask him. So then, he gives you that light whatever, and you're like, that's not good enough. So then the game's new dialogue options will be something along the lines of, tell me more, or say no more, I got this. And obviously, say no more, I got this exits out of the dialogue, so you can go figure it out. Or tell me more gives you another hint, and in this case, he'll be a little more heavy-handed. Like, I think maybe you should, just as Anna just explained, honestly, with exactly how Sierra handled it, and it varies depending on the depth of the puzzle. It might be 3 of these, there might be 5 of these, like tiers or levels or whatever. But the point is that he never tells you more than you want to hear. But if you keep just bulldozing forward, tell me more, it will result in the full solution. So that way you don't ever truly need like a walkthrough or a guide or anything. You can always just go to Engelbert and get the answers. And that's something I hope to have watertight by the time it's released in less than 2 weeks. But I just added 2 more of these into the game yesterday based on little gaps that I had found. I think we've got them all covered now, but yeah, that's how it works. So yeah, you can always just turn to Engelbert if you get stuck, and he'll help you.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that. We're going to start wrapping this up, but there's something that I'm curious about. I'm sure a lot of other people are curious about. What is the future of Phantom Fellows? The game's not even out yet, but like, what is your future as a developer? Are you going to make another game? Are you going to make a different game? Can we see more of Oliver and Engelbert? Give us the scoop.
Right. So yeah, I'm pretty all in. I think I want to keep living a life like this, like making games, and yeah, I'm gonna keep doing this. Starting in November, I am going to begin development of the Phantom Fellows 2, and it's going to be I'll say this about it. It's going to be shorter. which it's the smart thing to do for just many different reasons. Because a game of this size is quite difficult to even manage it at this point in the game. Like, it is just so full that you really don't want to like touch or adjust anything, because it could cascade, and all of a sudden you have to, like, speed running, it takes 3 hours. Like, it's a huge game, and I mean like speed running, like holding down spacebar so you see no dialogue, and it's a gigantic game. But ultimately, I think it's going to be good for any potential fans of the game, because you won't have to wait another several more years for a game. I mean, okay, yeah, it might be like 2 years, but it'll be like a healthy amount of time. Maybe even 18 months. I have no idea. But the point is that this game is 7 days, 7 cases. The next game is going to be 3 days and 3 cases. And I know exactly what those 3 days are. They're already pretty well fleshed out. Like, not to the point of like the characters have names, but I know exactly what's going on for each day. I'm really, really excited about it. For all 3 days, I'm really excited about it. One of the days, I'm not going to spoil anything, because spoiling anything for the second one would spoil stuff for the first one. But I'll just say that, like, one of the days I wanted in this game and didn't have time for, but it's like, it's teased in the first game, where at some point during the first game, you'll see Engelbert be like, we're not going to get to that this week, but maybe another time. And so for the listeners, you'll have been rewarded for making it this far in the episode and playing the game and getting to that point and being like, I know it. Now I know what's going to be in the second game. So we're going to explore that thing. Another one of the days is something I came up with recently that's just really freaking exciting and cool. And yeah, sorry, I guess I'll have to leave that there. And I can't say the other thing either, because that's play. All right, look, listen, this was all largely just a bit of a tease. I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm going to be starting on the second game in November. It's going to be 3 days. And then the goal here is to actually see this story arc through in the form of a trilogy. So that's right now the loose goal is to have 3 Phantom Fellows games, the next 2 being about 3 days each. And yeah, go from there.
Well, cool. Well, I'm definitely excited. September 27th is coming really soon. By the time that this episode comes out, let's see, that'll be the 17th. So my goodness, just about another 14 days away from the time that you guys all hear it here. And it's all, are you finding, I know we talked a little bit about challenges, but just before we go, I just want to ask, how is this time? How do you feel right now? It's you're letting your children go to school for the first time, and the teachers are going to meet them. And what do you think? Are you okay?
No, I'm not. Mentally, I'm not okay at all. No. It's horrifying. I just want to dry heave every time I think about September 27th. Like, okay. There's a little part of me that's like glad to just rip the Band-Aid in a sense. I mean, this is not ripping a Band-Aid at all. It doesn't take 4 years to get a Band-Aid off. But yeah, we've been, okay, yeah, that's not fair, because 4 years has been the development time. But the last like 6 months or so of like beta testing and things like that, where it's like, okay, I think let's just get this over with by now. Let's just see what people think. And then every now and then, I was just reminded recently by somebody who's reviewing the game, who's been super kind about it. In addition to that person, another person who demoed it at the fanfare, and the words that they left me, and I'm like, hey, like people might like this, and it might be really cool to see them liking it on their streams and their videos and stuff. So I'm just now coming around to the idea of maybe getting excited about it, but it's mostly just like, honestly, it's not even fear or excitement. It's just business at this point. Like, I'm still just compiling Mac builds for GOG and Steam, and they both require being built differently because of achievements, and like, yeah, it's still just a lot of that. A lot of like the back endy, not even fun to really talk about stuff, because it's like, just compiling stuff and uploading it and fixing little things that are reports that are still coming in, and I guess that's good.
Oh, so your creative self is withering right now, but your business self is getting all worked up.
Yeah, and that on a personal level. Anna knows me so well, and she knows that I get a little grumpy when I'm not creating stuff. I start to get
true.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd love to put it in like a charming way, but it's not charming at all. I'm just a little miserable.
It's a lot, but that's okay. I mean, that's what friends are for.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, well, all right. Well, thank you for chatting about your game. I've been pushing Paul for this episode for a really long time, and he keeps saying, "Wait till it's closer, wait till it's closer," and finally, it's just like, I think we're closer now. So he was ready for it, and I just love to talk about it. You know how like you come across that thing, and then you're always thinking about it. This game is just like that. It gets stuck in your head. I haven't even found all of the achievements yet in it. Like there's so much depth. There's so many different ways to do things. There's so many alternative ways to do things, and yet it can be a completely linear, solid, straightforward game. Like it's really cool. I think it caters to the new and old adventurer alike, and not that we're the old, but old school, I guess you could say.
Yeah, exactly. And I know, I mean, it's quite a long episode, but anybody who's still here is still here. So why not just one more? But we've heard so much from me, so I just want to ask you, Anna, what was it like, seeing behind the curtain, I guess you could say, of like, what's it been like for you just watching a game being made and partaking in it's so much more than beta testing. I mean, it's like, I mean, you've tested stuff when it wasn't even really ready to be tested yet. Just to help me, just to dive in there and tell me if stuff was making sense, or to see if an animation triggered when it should have. And I mean, just, you've been, I cannot, is it you cannot overstate or you cannot understate?
Cannot overstate, understate. One of those. There will be stating, and It cannot be anything other than.
Right. Whichever's more dramatic, you can't do that. And to how much Anna has been just a crucial part of development. And I'm just wondering, what is your POV on this whole experience in a nutshell?
I'm obsessed with something from nothing. There's a little book that my son had when he was a kid, and that's what it was about. The little scraps from a baby blanket that a kid had, and his grandma would cut it, and the scraps would fall through the floor, and the mice would turn them into tablecloths and clothing and all sorts of things that never should have existed. And creating a game or anything out of nothing is kind of like that. You're making something that wasn't there before. So there was nothing, and now there's something. And yeah, I get it. It's digital, but it affects the real world. It's not just ethereal. There's a physical affect when you bring something into the world and it changes things. There's that really cool energy. And then watching like the growth of somebody that's making something for themselves, seeing your goals align and directions happen, and the highs and the lows and all the feelings it's put you through, being able to participate in the ways that I do. Although I haven't written directly for the game, I've written things for the game that Paul has taken and put into the game in different ways. We've quoted each other. It's kind of been a journey all the way through, and Oliver and Engelbert have kind of become my family as well. It is truly magical just seeing something like that happen, and I'm right there with you. I've been watching people stream it. I mean, Paul's been a little bit too scared to on a few accounts, and I've been watching people kind of experience and get to know the game, and I'm just so excited for it to get out into the world now. You're something from nothing is going to maybe become 1 game, 2 game, 3 game, more game, and it really becomes something real. Is it crazy to ask, but do you think out there in the world one day there might be a physical Phantom Fellows something? Like, is somebody going to be able to hold, like, you've got merch right now, don't you? You've got t-shirts and posters, mugs, pillows, all that stuff online, like through, as I've mentioned at the end of the episode, www.thephantomfellows.com. You can bring a little piece of the Phantom Fellows home to you.
Nice. Wow. Well done. That was great. Yeah. They will be able to hold that stuff. If you ever meet me, you can hold me. He
likes that being held. That happened a lot at the fanfare. I'm like, because he's over 6 feet tall, and I'm just like, somebody else is cradling him like a small child. I'm just like, dude, how do you get so many people to cradle you like that?
I love that question. Oh, and you had mentioned there's so much of Anna in the game, because so many things were poached from our messenger comments and things like that, where funny lines were born that way or whatever. But one thing for everybody listening, I'm sure a lot of you, you've seen the trailer, it's been forced on you in one way or another. And there's a line in the trailer where where a ghost is like swaggering, and he's like, "She stabbed the wrong person." That's a story that Anna told right here on this podcast many years ago about how the wrong person got stabbed.
Yeah,
And
that
we were
does
just
happen.
like, who is the right person? Like, oh man. So anyway, that's a fun one, right? Because that was actually born on this podcast. So
I love it. This is history making podcast all about things that were made in history.
right, exactly. It's all very historical. Yeah.
And this podcast wouldn't even be what it was if it wasn't for our awesome Patreon members and longtime fans. Hopefully, if you're out here in Patreon, and I'm going to do a special shout out to one person because they just won a Classic Gamers Guild podcast t-shirt. So we'll get there. But Gareth, as a true believer, a double true believer, thank you so much for continuing to be a fan, listening to the podcast and everything you did at the fanfare. I'm going to keep saying that. Mick, Michael Council, same here. I mean, it costs a lot to do this because you're in Australia. So it's like a little bit extra expensive to be here on an American site with the exchange rate. And I really, really appreciate you, not just for that, but for being you and for being awesome. Brian Manown, Death Defying, amazing music, amazing person. Jay Holmes, who's supported us for longer and for more than I think any other person has supported the podcast, who just bought every time 32-bit sees me around, we end up having a great conversation, or he'll get me a sub, and is just one of the biggest supporters of the adventure game community. And Jeffrey Couch, I know you're only a show supporter line, but you also still give $10 a month just because you're so awesome. So thank you to you and Mark Fillin and Tim Ellis and Alan May, who now let me just double check here. Alan May, you are what?
I was going to buy you time to look it up, but you found it quickly.
No, I got it. No, it's okay. You won a Classic Gamers Guild t-shirt from us. You're over there hanging out, being cool, and won a contest in the guild. So thank you for being a super fan and helping to support the podcast. All of you, Tim Ellis, like all of you are just huge supporters in the community, making games and just being awesome. So thank you. Thank you. And anybody else who wants to join, you can join for free and see that we put out episodes, or as little as $1 a month. We didn't take that away. $5 and $10 because we're ambitious. So you know. There it is. Otherwise, come find us out there. If you're not going to look for us on Patreon, look for us on Twitter at CGG Podcast or at the Phantom Fellows. You can send us an email. Our new email address is, if you emailed us in the past and we missed it, this is why. We're now at mail@cggpodcast.com. You can find us on Facebook. We're a page and we're a group. We're also on Instagram and we're on YouTube. I just uploaded all of the past episodes with the little picture that goes with them. So look us up, the Classic Gamers Guild. We're on Facebook. And at the end of this episode, we're going to feature the song Plate Runner from the Phantom Fellows soundtrack. So this is going to be the music from the diner. And it's one of my top pieces in the game. I really like this one. So stick around and have a listen. Brand new music from the Phantom Fellows soundtrack.
Well, a bloody exclusive. That's cool. Yeah, it plays at the diner. I just have to say that it is one of the less ambionic. Is that a word? Can I force
it is now.
Word?
It sounds like, anyways, no, I won't say. Carry on.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's it's fine. I shouldn't have done this.
You were supposed to say one line, man.
Oh my god. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Oh, right. The game comes out September 27th on GOG and on Steam. Probably on Fireflower and itch.io too. I would nudge you guys in the GOG direction. September 27th. So that is not this Friday, but next Friday. Check it out. If you like it, please leave a good review. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to turn into the please leave a review guy immediately after release. It's exhausting, the many requirements of the dev life thing. But yeah, please check it out. I hope you really like it. If you like it, tell me. I'll be so happy. And then all the while, don't be doing a murder.
This episode's important to me, just so you know, so be good and behave yourself.
Thank you. I refuse. Absolutely not.
That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, baby.